Okay, it's 6:33, calling to order the Energy Committee meeting for July 24th, 2024. We do have a quorum, with Kevin, Maria, Matt, and myself here. Melinda's here and Marcy Cass is on as a guest. Do we have any public comment? Anybody else? Marcy, are you here for public comment or are you here to observe?
I'm here to observe, really.
And I don't think we have any public comment.
Oh, but we haven't done
And now I will
passing the torch.
I will relinquish chair for the moment, because the chair is here. We have gone through the call to order and public comment.
All right, sorry about that.
It was difficult, but I made it through.
Yeah, so, thanks for that, Reed. Sure did a great job.
So,
All right, so on to approval of the draft minutes from 7:10.
I read through it, I
Anyone have anything?
it's fine,
yeah,
I didn't see anything.
thought the pieces where we had the discussion and Melanie were very thorough.
Yeah.
There's no updates, anyone wanna make a motion?
I'll move to adopt the minutes of 7/10/2024. I'll second.
All right. All in favor of adopting the minutes of July 10, 2024 as written? Aye.
Aye.
I'm very grateful for the meeting, the minutes, because I feel like it was 4 months ago that we talked about. What we talked about, and I was like, wait, that was the last meeting? Oh, yeah, I gotta remember now. Oh,
I think that's all we have for tonight, so unanimous. Anyone online?
no,
No.
that's just
All right. Well, passes with 5 ayes. On to the clean heat standard, next steps.
yeah, so, mostly I kind of thought it'd be good if you had a brainstorming session to kind of figure out how this process is all gonna go, and, I wrote down kind of my thoughts. And both to the process and then also as to some of the policy questions that are, that should be talked about.
I have a silly question, but I realized that I didn't. We were using standard, but this says ordinance. Can you explain what sort of power an ordinance has versus like? Like I hear standard and I think of like the renewable portfolio standard or something like
Yeah.
state level. When it's an ordinance at the city level. What is that? What sort of enforceability is this? Does this mean that it applies to like new builds and everything in between, or is this something? Like what does it apply to essentially?
So an ordinance would apply to, that could be anything as defined in the ordinance, right? It could be new, it could be existing, it could be both. The difference, I guess I can't really tell you the difference between an ordinance and standard, because that's not, like,
Yeah.
standard is not really a term that I think generally we use on the local level, but as far as difference between an ordinance and a bylaw, in a bylaw, there's like vesting, so, projects that are, or, like, say, projects that went through development approvals before before a bylaw was passed could be vested in the old bylaw. Whereas an ordinance, pretty much once it takes effect and it's applicable to everybody. that as defined in the ordinance.
Oh, so this could be, like, you could get controversial and be like, this ordinance now says you can't emit fossil fuel, like.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Tough to enforce.
Yeah,
I think
so we have
so.
to kind of be careful how we write it, in
Yeah.
other words, because it could have unintended.
yeah, I mean, I think it is important to be really, careful and.
And one of the things,
that.
with ordinances that I know of, like there's a noise ordinance and,
Mhm.
Doesn't apply to that 35.
what else is it?
No.
There's another noise and.
There's a
It's
whole
like
bunch.
nuisance things,
Yeah.
things, and it usually requires a complaint. But it does, I mean, because there's not gonna be any police officer looking around
Mhm.
sniffing your tailpipe.
It doesn't have to involve, it doesn't have to require a complaint,
Mhm.
we could set it up.
I think of like
In such a
drinking
way
in
that-
public can be a city ordinance, like no, the
Yeah,
imbibing in public, and they don't need a complaint to enforce that.
right, or like a parking ordinance, you can't park on the street, whatever, and. There's different ways to enforce it, I think the city of South Burlington has like fines. That apply, I mean, same might be true for Burlington. So, you can do that, but I mean, the reality is that. You're likely gonna be relying on self-certification, because. The town doesn't have a building inspection department. And, without that, it's like, that's gonna be your main means of enforcing, so. Like South Burlington
Mhm.
has a self-certification system. They say in their ordinance that they're gonna appoint a building inspector, but. Who knows when that might be.
Yeah.
But-
Were any of you on the select board meeting on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right, you were there. Melinda, do you think it'd be helpful to just a quick review of
Yeah.
like what happened?
Sure, yeah, you wanna
Sure,
go for it?
yeah, we can trade out. So,
Forgot it.
yeah.
Sorry.
So
See,
first
this
of all,
is why minutes are
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
helpful.
Pretty good. Melinda did a great job, so that's the summary. So Melinda introduced the memo to the select board. They all already read the memo. There are quite a few by select board meeting standards, quite a few folks in physical attendance, I think 12 to 15 maybe, that were there to specifically support this.
The clean heat ordinance.
The clean heat ordinance, yep, they support that. So after Melinda kind of walked the select board through it, explained the memo, the select board opened it to public comment. And some folks in Sustainable Williston had stacked the deck. I think you'd
Yeah,
say.
I was gonna say, who was sitting there?
Yeah, so the first person that stepped up to speak was Andrew Chelnick, who's a
South
city councilor in
City
South
council, yeah.
Burlington, previously on the South Burlington Energy Committee, quite familiar with this. And he basically gave a history of what South Burlington did, what it means to them, the benefits they're seeing. He also specifically talked about the pushback that they haven't received, but he wanted to, he called that out as one of the things. And then he took a few questions from the select board. Second person up was Jack Hansen, I believe,
From Burlington.
former city councilor in Burlington.
Mhm.
Also, they have a clean heat standard. He spoke to what they had done. He was careful not to repeat all the things that Andrew had said, but again.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Yeah.
So how is this supposed to be different than the clean heat standard that the state is trying to implement, which is part of the utility, it's a.
So the clean heat ordinances, I don't know if they're actually called that, in South Burlington and Burlington are basically. You're not allowed, with a whole bunch of caveats, right? You're not allowed to have, or I should say, a significant percentage of the home heating in any new building, commercial. So that's not home, commercial or residential, needs to be provided by carbon-free sources. I think that's how they stated it. Enforced on new buildings and done, like Melinda said, kind of on your honor, right? they've talked to a building inspector at some point, but
Right, in Burlington,
Self-attested.
they have an
They have it,
inspection system,
yeah.
so,
So that's the stick for Burlington to say they've seen success, okay,
yeah,
cause I'm one, like, how are they measuring success, but maybe that's how.
yeah.
well, in one way they're, for South Burlington, I think one way they're measuring success is that they have. You know, Andrew had the numbers, but some number of units that have gone in. And no pushback from the developers, they've actually had support from the developers in town.
Right, I mean, but the developers aren't paying heating and cooling costs, that's gonna be
That's
borne
right.
by them.
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting things I think. Both South Burlington and Burlington have is that one of the ways to get out of having to comply is to show that the cost. And it can't be just the install cost over a 20-year period of, you know, heating the home is going to be higher with natural gas. So that's one of the things that.
Or higher with the.
Sorry, higher with
with
a,
the
yeah, any,
clean air.
any carbon emitting system. And they've not had. I think any pushback, maybe Burlington has had one
They said
unit, I'm sorry, one building or something. But
There was, to my knowledge, that building was a Habitat for Humanity house.
Mm.
That
they did or did not install. heat
they
pumps.
didn't install, no, they didn't. They said, they got a waiver.
Is so is the assumption that if it's carbon free, it's electrified?
Yeah.
So we're assuming that,
Unless you do the green gas with BG, Vermont gas, they're
And-
saying that
I think this was,
they're exempting that.
I could be wrong, I thought they had said carbon,
South
Free.
Burlington does allow renewable natural
South
gas.
Burlington does,
Yeah.
but Burlington does not.
And then,
Burlington does, but you have to, I think there's some additional hoops you have to go
Okay.
through in order to, you know, you can have it, but. Yeah, there's, I can't remember off the top of my
I
head.
assume that renewable natural gas is like you just are a customer and you pay an extra fee for it, then it's kind of like.
Yeah,
Ooh, all of my power, I'm Google, all my power comes from wind
And you're paying for-
sitting far away from my
Right.
data centers, but I'm
Yeah.
paying for it, so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was
I think-
curious because I think that holds true with Green Mountain Power here is fairly cheap for New England. So I think that probably, I think the electrification assumption probably works for now.
There is,
Mhm.
as I recall, also a price on carbon factored in, and I'm not sure where they pull that
Is it
from.
the $50 or whatever that you.
I'm not sure it's that.
In, in Burlington, it's $150 per ton, in South Burlington, it's 100.
Okay,
And I'm not sure why they're different, but that would be a question.
per ton of what?
carbon CO2.
Carbon.
emitted.
CO2, yeah.
We also had, there's also an architect who has been here at one of our meetings, and I can't remember.
John
his name.
Helmgar
Yeah, so he spoke
used to be on the DRB.
kind of from the architect's perspective, that this is the approach that. At least his architecture firm is taking, and he says others are taking as well, to like design with clean heat up front. And then a few other people spoke, but at the end of the day. It came down, you know, that they talked about it, they asked a bunch of questions, and there was a movement, they moved to. Basically approve what we were doing, like to say, yes, go ahead and, you know. Look
And do
into this,
research,
do the
yes,
research, come
yes.
back with,
Yes.
you know, the recommendations, and it was unanimous. Which was a surprise, I think, to a lot of folks.
Well, I think the three kind of experts that were brought in, when you say, you know, sustainable Williston stack today, but I think that was valuable.
Oh, yeah.
More than just the general
100%.
public saying, you know,
Yeah,
we presented a petition because we already do that, the select board already did that. I think I was on the phone listening or on Zoom, but, you know, listening and seeing what was going on. I thought it was a very good step to bring those people in because it provided a lot of positive information about the two towns that have done it. And then the architect's perspective of what people are doing with future views of developments, you know, so.
yeah, it was definitely a good thing, and the vibe in the room was very much engaged. The select board seemed engaged, asking questions, they had a good conversation about it, so.
Do other cities have any part of their ordinances where either remodels or new equipment are,
Burlington just did, I think.
Yeah.
Burlington amended theirs recently to include that, I think.
Yeah, so they now have it so that it applies to existing large buildings. I think, can't remember the threshold off the top of my head, existing large buildings. That are replacing their heating systems, have to go to a carbon free or renew. I think they still use the term renewable.
Carbon free.
Energy or whatever.
I think carbon free is what we've decided.
Yeah, and whereas South Burlington applies only to new construction. And my understanding is that South Burlington discussed having it apply to existing, they may make that change. But to do so would require a change in the city's charter.
I'm curious because based on the numbers we saw last week, which I think are incorrect, because it shows us only adding like 200 homes in the next 10 years or something like that, or not even, or next until 2050.
That was.
Yeah,
wrong.
it
That
was totally wrong,
No, it
but
was wrong, yeah.
assuming that the existing stock is bigger than our to be built stock in the next, say, 20 years.
Mhm.
One of the things I would think of is. We could go the route of only doing new, but it almost kind of makes sense. To, and maybe with caveats, like applying for waiver or something, like if you put in a new system. Or your water heater kicks the bucket, like you can't do natural gas anymore, you have to go electric or something.
It's really expensive. It's really expensive to retrofit a lot of homes in Vermont. I just know my experience in Stowe, and that's folks who can generally afford it. I mean, the sticker shock is. It's a lot, and you're not getting rebates for the contractor's work. You're getting rebates for the heat pump.
Well, that's why there might be a way to caveat it, it's
Yeah.
like if the. You know, like for my home, for example, built in 92, it's gonna be a really simple switch. When my water heater kicks the bucket any day now, I'm just gonna pop an electric one in it, it's not a big issue.
I think the important thing to keep in mind there is that, well, maybe the reality is that most people. I'm just making stuff up now, but most people aren't planning in advance for these things, like most,
No,
this is interesting statistics, right, like.
Yeah.
Most furnaces and water heater replacements happen under duress,
Yep.
and, you
That's
know,
why people
inevitably.
make so much money.
The middle of February in Vermont, when like the furnace goes out, you go to Home Depot and you see what they've got, so.
Yeah, you get the
My
ones that.
last house in Essex, both went out at different years and then both were in inopportune times and
Yeah.
we had to write a check, so.
No,
So
one
maybe
thing you can
the
do is like
big-
for planned upgrades, like. This, you know, it wasn't just that it went out, but hey, we're retrofitting the whole house, we're doing work in the house, so maybe there's a way to include stuff like that, I'm not sure.
Well, that sounds like it's already someone is planning to change their system over. They would probably.
Yeah, maybe
Are
adding,
doing that because they're changing over to a different.
Well,
I
and
know what you're saying.
the way the energy, efficiency Vermont and then the utilities, the way our rebate structures are supposed to work is we should be the reason why you decide to go electric. So there's already a structure out there in place to incentivize. And if we're setting those rebates amount correctly.
yeah,
Well,
it'd be
yeah.
interesting to know what Burlington did, just given the fact that, you know, most of these do happen.
So again,
under duress.
It's just
the
commercial.
it's
Burlington
just-
ordinance, the Burlington ordinance applies to, existing large buildings and. I thought the threshold was very large, like it may have been as much as 40,000 square feet or something.
Okay, so warehouses and.
And as well
Rock
as
department.
as all existing city-owned buildings, so
Mhm.
they're saying they have to do it no matter what.
So they're not doing it for residential.
They would have a huge issue with all the rental
Yeah,
stock,
no.
holy buckets, they would have a unique.
Yeah.
well, and the other problem being, that a lot of the housing stock in Burlington, is really old and is not outfitted with an electrical system that can handle heat pumps, mine included.
Mhm.
I would love to switch over to a heat pump.
You have 100 amp service.
I have 60 amps.
60 amps.
This is a house that was built in the 50s or 60s.
Wow.
So if you can imagine all those old homes in Burlington,
Yeah,
you
And
know,
you gotta cut through brick and, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, there's.
it's exorbitantly expensive.
Well, you could say, have it apply to like, for example, when people put an addition on the back of their house or over their garage, usually you have to extend this, like the existing heating system. You could just say it, you,
Most people are putting in a mini split and that.
yeah, put a mini
Yeah.
split, and it is true, that's what usually happens, I think, cause that's everyone I've known, but that's not exclusively true, cause I know my in-laws decided to go the other way.
Right.
And so we made it, like, if you can't extend an existing, you have to use carbon-free for.
But with the clean heat standard, you know, Bournes, for example, would be incentivized to convince your in-laws to put in a heat pump, cause they also need to chase credits
Right.
now as well.
What, yeah, once that
Oh, when
goes
did
through.
that switch over?
Yeah.
They're trying to figure it out. right now.
Oh, okay, cause I was like, they definitely,
Like,
when I was looking at
yeah.
it, they pushed me toward central air instead of mini splits, cause they're like, it's
Yeah.
gonna be way cheaper.
Right, yeah, that number 3 is basically all the subcommittees for the clean heat standard that's going on right now,
Okay.
Number
with the
three.
exemption of the
Yeah.
Williston
But
specific.
I thought we were talking about developments, not. Like, we're getting into conversation now about single occupancy, old housing.
Yeah,
I didn't think that we were even gonna consider that originally, I guess, we're talking about adopting.
so that's the question, like, the question before us is,
What to do.
like, the no, I check, who's it apply to? It applies to whatever and whoever we want it to, so like.
Yeah, and my
The first step
question,
is to define the scope.
and that was why I brought up, if the majority of our housing stock is already built. Do we want to consider, how can we have a maximum impact without creating a standard that's a nightmare for people? And is it, maybe we go the commercial route, maybe we say like additions, you can't extend existing heating systems. They need to be
Yeah,
carbon free.
so a suggestion here, and that would be, to kind of look at the process first, before you like sort of dive into these policy questions, because the policy questions, they're important. And, you know, they will take a while to kind of work through. But I think that, I mean, my recommendation would be that you establish a process for kind of how you're gonna get this.
What's the intent of the ordinance, like, why did that come up, like, what are we trying to get out of it?
The intent of the ordinance is that, oh, Marcy wrote the thing, go ahead, Marcy.
Could I make a request that right now, you guys are like the size of a postage stamp, and it's really hard to hear if I can't, you know, I can't see. Could we take down the notes just for a minute, so?
You can do that on your Zoom too.
Oh, I
Yeah,
can?
you can.
Yeah, you just have to switch us to the main view. If you hover over us. Where you change,
It's not, let's see, view options. Well, I see the,
What if you go to participants, is that, no, that wouldn't work.
no, like if you,
Go to the view button in the
Yeah.
corner.
In
And
the
you should
upper
have-
right corner, you should have a
You
view
guys are doing
button.
this better than looking at them.
standard side-by-side speaker, standard.
Yeah.
If you go to the side by side view. Then you can make the participants be
Much
really
bigger.
big.
I can't seem to do that. It's because it's the notes are featured. But anyway,
Well-
okay, whatever. So, the reason for this, for wanting an ordinance is, because the town plan process is in the works. But by the time oh, here we go. Thank you. By the time, that's finished, it's gonna be like 2026 or something. So it's gonna take a while. And the thought was that there are these large scale developments that are proposed for Williston that presumably will get started before the new energy plan is like operable. So that's the reason for this ordinance. And the ordinance is targeting new builds large scale builds. I'm not sure like what the threshold is. Like how many units makes it a large scale build. But the thought is that it's the cheapest time to install a system. They'll never, there's never a cheaper time, and any building that doesn't, any large scale build that isn't outfitted with like heat pumps or whatever is a retrofit waiting to happen, and that becomes much more expensive. So the thought was to have this be on a faster track than the town plan. And
So-
Okay, Mark, just like one quick thing, as we've discussed, talked to the planning commission about this topic. The topic then came up, well, what if we don't do this now? Like, what if we just ignore this and then wait for the town plan to go into effect? Then what happens? The answer is that we still need to do this because the town plan only defines what the town should be doing.
Goals.
The town plan
Goals.
is a goal, right? It's not in and of itself an ordinance.
It's not a bylaw, it's not, and it can't be a bylaw.
Yeah, so even though, like, to Marcus's point, we're trying, like, there's a desire to get this done before the town plan. Because there's a whole bunch of developments in process now. Even if we wait until the town plan becomes the new town plan in 2026, 25, we would still then need to do this if we wanted to. Kind of comply with what's in the goal, like, this is the mechanism to achieve the goals of the town plan, existing or the new one, there's just a slight difference in language.
So we're basically trying to action force, right? So if a new development's going in, they sit down with Efficiency Vermont and Vermont Gas and Green Mountain Power. And they come up with their incentives and they come up with X number. And they can say it's either affordable or not, right? We either go left or right. We basically want them to go left. Is that really the intent of the ordinance, rather than leaving it up to their decision with EBT and all the players? We're saying you must,
Right,
rather than.
because they're talking, yeah, we're saying take a longer view. That they wanna be set up for electric, even though maybe today it's cost comparative, lifetime, it's we expect it to be better for electric.
And
So-
also the fact that we're, the clean heat standard's coming, right? So there's gonna be incentives, to go with that.
And it's in our town plan.
Yeah, it's in the town plan, but I mean, Mary, to your point, anything built today. Is, or I'm sorry, as Marcia said, anything built today is a retrofit in the future, right? So. The longer we go building these, it puts the onus and the cost on the home buyer as opposed to. Tackling that upfront, right? It requires someone in the future as, inevitably, I think fuel costs will go up, right, as a result of the cleaning standard. It puts that on the individual who bought the house. One way that I've been thinking about it, there's a choice perspective here, right? If you move into a new development in Williston today, there is no choice. You move into a home with natural gas, right? There's nothing today that gives people a choice. So the default today is natural gas. We can write this however we want to, but one benefit I see coming out of this is that you move into a home, you might have both systems, you might only have electrical, but there's an option, like natural gas is likely already gonna be in those neighborhoods. I assume, right? I think the network's already there.
North of I-89.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so what this does is it removes the natural gas default and therefore puts the onus on the town to do this and the developers to build with clean heat as opposed to putting the onus of the retrofit on the owner down the road.
So,
what-
I want a quick question about that though, because. If it's an ordinance and you said it can apply backward to an extent, right?
Depending on how it's framed, yeah.
So is this something that we should be telling developers now, like be prepared, this is going in because it could apply or like?
Well, yeah, and that gets to the process question.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it gets to, how you wanna go about this, what kind of outreach you wanna do,
Cause there's
Who
some
you wanna
big developments
engage.
about to start.
how you wanna engage them, et cetera, and I do think that that is a
Is that a good point?
very good point, that you're gonna wanna bring in developers.
Cause there's the big
Okay.
one going
I
into
would-
Finney right
I
now.
may. If I may, I just want to add something that I think, Kevin, you left out when you gave an overview of the select board meeting. Which is the select board members voted unanimously that that the energy committee should go ahead and, work on this ordinance. And then in addition, Greta said this should have a high priority. So.
Yeah, this is incredibly complicated, but.
I saw her running
It's fine to
on
say.
my way here.
And that was,
That's my-
that was Terry's, so Greta said that, I think Jean echoed that, someone else did, Terry.
But they didn't say it was high priority. They said to do the research. Which may ultimately result in an ordinance that's to the
Mhm.
benefit of the town and the citizens. But to Melinda's point, as she has put 2.5 pages together, there's a lot of
There's a lot
process
to do.
work.
Yeah.
So we've been down in the weeds of who's gonna do it and what kind of thing, but
Right.
really. We
Yeah.
need a plan and what do we know and what don't we know and who's gonna talk to whom, and to your point, what development scene is already there, who's impacted, who are we gonna talk to?
So do we
Okay,
wanna
And
get-
so you need, just like
we
any
need a
project, you
date.
need a huge project plan.
Yeah,
To
but
even
we,
say, where do we start?
I think we need a date and we should base it off of. When, like, do we have a schedule of when developments, like timing for developments coming up or?
No, because right now, there's a whole bunch of developments that have basically have their discretionary permit in hand. They're not building anything because interest rates are way too high. We've seen very,
Yeah.
very little building even in the last year, I would say,
Okay,
or 2 years, really. And yeah, nothing's getting built right
there's
now.
one building in that Finney Crossing extension, not really. an
Building,
extension,
yeah,
but
building G, I think that's. Let me see, is that their commercial building? I can't remember, there
It
might
looks
be.
like an apartment building.
Yeah, there's that one,
But that's the only thing that's been built back there so far. It looks like it's just
Yeah.
a huge cleared field.
right.
But they're still doing infrastructure.
So
right
like,
now.
Yeah,
Summerfield, up where the Cadillac Golf. They have practically all their permits in hand, I mean, they haven't put any of the infrastructure in, so that's the first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna put streets in, and they're gonna lay the. The conduit for electrical, and they're gonna, and whatever. And the annex is now, they're starting to build homes up there, but. It's not gonna happen fast. And then there's others that have permits and they're just not, there's no movement, so.
we should probably get a list of those developments to understand, like, what's going in, and like. Figure out a timeline then too, based on when we, obviously before 2025. So we need a timeline on when we want to have research done and when we want an ordinance. Draft, right? And this will all require talking to those developers then as well as part of the process.
So is it, I mean, buildings, is there a season? I mean, like, is building going, like, could we just say by spring of next year? Cause we're not gonna get it, I wouldn't think we can get anything done, completed this year, get through select board and planning commission.
Yeah,
So
I think
probably
that,
spring would be our best hope.
I think that, I don't think you can, lay out a schedule according to when you think people are gonna build things, because that always changes, and they won't necessarily tell us, and if they do, they may change their minds, and, like Summerfield, we thought they were gonna start building roads and stuff last fall, and he changed his
Oh, I
mind.
meant more like who do we have to talk to? Who's actually actively potentially building? Who has their permits? Then
Yeah.
Those that we need to know that so that we
I
can.
have, I
That was-
can
that
give you
was
a
on the
list
list.
right now.
Yeah, that was on the list.
But you
right?
also need
On the dock.
public input, not just the developers.
Yeah.
But what does the public think of this? You know, there's an energetic group who has brought this together and the select board has said, sounds like something we should do research on, but if you have to have a large part of it, just like with the Williston Growth Plan, the Growth Center, all this yellow board that's still here. And how many meetings were held to get people's input on where should the town of Williston be in 2050? This is actually becomes part of that.
I think maybe one of the first things we could do is have somebody from South Burlington come talk to us.
Yeah.
And help us understand what their process was, what their timeline was, and what their engagement process was. I do think there's some important differences between this and like the 2050 plan or even the Taft Corner form-based code.
This is
And
gonna.
listening to Andrew Chelnick talk, it wasn't quite as exciting as maybe those, the public input for those others, right? There wasn't as much passion maybe around it, right? Obviously, there's a lot around form-based code. So, but I think having someone from South Burlington come in, or maybe the same two folks, having Andrew and Jack Henson come in and talk to us.
What public outreach has been done in Williston? Like, do we have?
For this or
better?
We're just started.
Yes,
Yes,
because
sir.
the
There's a
sustainable
newspaper
Williston's advocated.
So here, yeah, so
I'd
here's
love to know
what
what the folk
No,
here.
we
think.
haven't
Rather-
done anything because. The first step was really to bring it to the select board and get some input and
that was
take the
last.
temperature.
Well, and
So
if we're writing this the way, or if we're going the way of like South Burlington and Burlington. Really, the main stakeholders are gonna be developers, businesses, commercial buildings, like things, the general public. Is more gonna interact with this as business owners, as developers. The public will still be interested in it, I'm sure, but it's gonna be less. Like form-based code or something else, cause this is the average homeowner here. Probably isn't gonna have as much passion about this unless it's gonna apply, like cost them money, right? That's
In their
what we-
existing homes, right?
Yeah, like if we start talking about existing homes, if it's not, if we target it at new developments or if we target it at. Big, large scale system changes in apartment buildings or in commercial development, that. The main people we really need to be engaging with, not that we don't exclude the public, but I'm betting that South Burlington probably was talking to developers and. Business owners as the primary stakeholders.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that's just like the fox in the hen house, in my opinion. Like I'm down in Finney's complex or whatever that is. And it's forced air for the heat, which is propane or probably Vermont gas. And then there's a heat pump in the summer for AC, which I don't turn on because I don't want to pay GMP. So I think there's like a quality of life piece to this that we leave out when we focus only on developers, utilities. In the business side, and I mean, this is just my bias coming into it, I'll be honest, but this is what I try to do in Stowe. It's what I'm gonna try to do here. It's like, what do the people here want? Like Burlington and South Burlington, they can do some cool stuff because of the size of their community and what they can do there. But it's like, we don't all need to just cut and paste and edit from something that's already been done. What do we want? And then,
But it's what's in our energy plan is to do this, and what this is really doing for us is that it's. Getting a vehicle of enforcement. It's kind of like, we all feel frustrated that. You put great words into your town plan, we shall endeavor to.
Yeah.
Go green, but there's no, you can't get it in the bylaw, you can't, so this is, we wanna do it. We're the representatives of the town, but we will take input.
So,
And we will listen to that input and we will adapt to it, but I don't think that, as Maria said, it's really you know, well, the original plan was to do large development, right? In which case you're dealing with developers. It's not necessarily, I mean, the people who are gonna be renting, but that's who. You know, the future tenants, I don't know if we can talk to them, right? They're
So
not even
I-
here.
I
We're
would-
talking to developers and
Yeah.
get them to go, because this is the way things are going. And we are saving, as Kevin was saying, people, okay, allow the developer to do what they want, they put in natural gas, and then. You know, the state says you have to have clean energy, so rip it out and put in a heat pump down the line.
Well, we're not gonna go all electric anytime soon. They're gonna still keep the Vermont gas connection. We're just gonna have a cutoff temperature point that's gonna be higher. That's what they're doing in Burlington.
Yeah, South Burlington's a,
They're not- they're not
85%.
getting
So
They're not getting rid of fossil fuel.
I would like to add something, and that's, you know, I agree, this is in our energy plan. The town has multiple goals. And some of those goals conflict with each other. So I would also say that the housing committee is a stakeholder and should be involved, and I would even go so far as to recommend, you have some joint meetings with them, so that you can talk through concerns, and also affordable housing developers like Champlain Housing Trust, Green Mountain Habitat. How's this gonna affect their ability to provide affordable housing?
In fact, when you said that Habitat for Humanity got the waiver in Burlington, I was really surprised at that. That they would,
And they put in all electric or post all electric in Lamoille County, affordable housing.
Mhm.
So it's been done in Stowe and Morrisville, using mostly heat pumps.
So. I think we've got one concrete thing, which is to have somebody from South Burlington. Come talk to us, or Burlington, just to give us an idea of how they went about the process, right, as we're thinking about the process.
Yeah.
As far as. The question of how long this takes and coming up with a plan. I think it's worthwhile, and we can either do it before or after we talk to some other communities that have been through this. You know. Coarse grained, bottom up plan, right? Instead of saying, well, when do we want to be done by? Like, we can go through here, there's a bunch of ways we can go through and plan it, and. People take guesses, right? The guesses are gonna be wrong, but at the end of the day, it's probably gonna. Come up pretty close to what. You know. To what we'll see in the future, right? So there's a lot of things to be done. We go through, we just bottom up each one of those. How long will this take? Well, this will take us about a month and a half. Okay, this one, right? Then get into a Gantt chart and then figure out what the timeline looks like. I think any other way, like, we can have goals of getting it done by a certain time, but without some kind of bottom up, even very coarse grained attempt at estimating, I think will be a tough spot.
So I started writing out some steps based on what I've been hearing in here, and it sounds like. We all should take some time to research South Burlington and Burlington's ordinances just to get familiar with them.
Yeah, I
To see
think,
how they work, cause I would like, you know them very well, I don't know them as well, so it would be nice, but at least for me,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and read them.
I think they're in the minutes of a previous meeting. Was it
yeah,
2 meetings ago?
I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've all got access, so yeah, totally agree. We should
I
all get
gotta
those.
dig into those and understand, cause there's something that's been said twice now that I don't fully understand, but I'm not gonna take the meeting to try and educate myself. And then bringing in South Burlington or Burlington to talk to us about their process. Then it sounds like we should just do a course grade plan, you know, with very loose timings, but with maybe like a spring 2025. You know, select board meeting as a date. And then I have, after that, we should talk to the housing committee and other city stakeholders that are related. Before we then identify, because they will help us identify stakeholders as well. So then we come up with like a pool of stakeholders and a communication plan for them. And then I'd say after that, that's when we maybe come up with a very bare bones draft, and we might just use Burlington or South Burlington's, change some names from Burlington to Williston. And start deleting things that don't apply to us and like maybe adding a few things. And just make it super rough, super outliney, and start filling it, plugging in holes. from there, cause I think why reinvent the wheel? Yes, we wanna tailor it to Williston, I agree with you 100%. But why start new, like,
Yeah.
working in energy policy every day, what do? My market's always like 10 years behind everyone else, we steal from mid-continent and you know, the mid-continent market, we just take their tariff language and we kind of copy paste and we modify it for us. Cause we know that it's been working, it's been approved by FERC. If they've already done this and their stakeholders have been, you know, amenable to it, doesn't mean ours will, but it might just be a good place to start.
I mean, we also have to keep in mind, there is a structure out there moving us towards this, right? The renewable energy standard, clean heat standard, all of that is, and I get that paradigm shifts take longer than people want. But I think it's important to say, like, what is it we're trying to achieve? And how can we nudge in the direction the
Yeah,
world's already going? Like,
is that like a homework, or is that having someone come in and talk to us about like the current state of that?
yeah, I
work?
mean, I think that list is great, but I think we need, like, you've got GMP, you've got Vermont Gas, I think you've got to add. Efficiency Vermont, and then I think we all should pay attention to the clean heat standard that's going on right now, because they have all these subcommittees on housing, on equity, on workforce. And there's gonna be a ton of information all in there, and those are folks who are trying to roll it out at the state level.
And I'm kind of hoping that Burlington and South Burlington did the research for us too.
Well,
To an
Yeah,
extent.
if we can get any
Although-
background research they did, that would help.
Yeah.
I mean, this is further along now than it was when sorry, not this,
Well,
State
it was
level
vetoed
stuff's
the
further
first
along.
time around, wasn't it?
It was.
what's that?
Yeah, it was vetoed the first time around. This is time number 2.
Well, it's,
At the
the
state
veto
level.
was overridden.
The clean heat standard was, it was,
Yeah, it was two
like
things,
2
but
years ago, it was rejected.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
the
okay.
clean heat
Sure.
standard was rejected.
Yeah.
The following year, it was the Affordable Heat Act.
That's right, yeah.
Which did not put a standard in place, but which tasked the Public Utilities Commission to go. And come back in 2 years, so spring of 2025 is when. I think the PUC comes back to present on like the output of all these
They're trying
committees.
hard.
They're trying, I think, last I heard they were incredibly far behind.
Okay, yeah, it's hard, it's really complicated.
So question about all these stakeholders, so. I guess time wise. Who do you want to invite to meetings versus who do you want to just have committee members go and have conversations with and report back? Cause if you invite every stakeholder to a meeting, you know, you're gonna be looking at 5 years from now, like. I mean, I don't know, just like how most efficiently can you do this outreach and gather information that you need?
I would say the first conversation with someone from South Burlington, just to understand what they went through, what due diligence they followed. Right, so that we have that and don't need to invent it, you know, from the get-go. I like the idea of Efficiency Vermont. I also think maybe, is this something Melanie would cover? Like, is anyone from CCRPC that is focused on policy and can kind of give us the cheat sheet of where things stand, which direction that wind is blowing?
You mean for the affordable?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
even
sure
just,
there is. but,
Maybe
yeah.
Darren.
who's the rep? I mean, I'm a little ignorant to the elected.
Angela Arsenal and Eric Brady are the two reps.
Yeah,
They
So
could come in,
Yeah,
I mean, they could come in,
We also could just email them. And I think that's something that.
Yeah.
We
send
could
some
just
link to the
email them.
statute.
Yeah, I think having Burlington and South Burlington come in and talk to us as a committee, but then
Yeah.
maybe assigning one of our members to go to other committee meetings like housing, what did you mention? You said housing
housing committee.
and, so other
That's the
committees.
affordable housing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's affordable housing.
I guess with
Yeah.
respect to the representatives, like. They were knowledgeable enough. To go through the legislative process,
Right.
but I think what we want now is more like. The really nerdy nuts and bolts of where things are in the. In the subcommittees and on the PUC side.
I mean, there's 2 dockets out there if we really wanna do a bunch of homework on our own. I mean, there's pages and pages of reading that you can,
I don't wanna.
Yeah.
read
I mean, you can even call into the subcommittee, they're all public meetings.
Yeah,
But it's incredibly dense.
But the CCRPC, Chittenden County,
I would think.
regional could have could maybe boiled it down.
Yeah.
Where they.
Well, that's
There's
one thing, like,
probably someone at Efficiency Vermont who's following it too.
Yeah.
I'd have to
I
imagine.
think, I guess I'm leery about asking CCRPC, because right now they're just like
They're
around.
overwhelmed, yeah.
Yeah, they're completely overwhelmed and.
I mean,
you know,
efficiency
and-
remote would be good.
Yeah, I think Efficiency Vermont
this
would
is part
have,
of
it's someone's following it, I know someone from it, it has to be following that, and they're going to give us the dumbed down, but like,
you know, VCAN is probably a good group to reach out to.
yeah, you're probably right.
VCAN has people that specifically follow this for the purposes of supporting energy committees.
Mhm. Good.
Yeah.
So-
That's Vermont Natural Resources Council, right?
No,
No, VCAN is the.
No, I know what VCAN is, but isn't that tied to the NRC?
I didn't think so,
No.
maybe,
Maybe I'm wrong.
if it is, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I think it's,
Or
Actually-
Energy Action Network is another good one, that's good
Yeah.
at explaining information. when there's
actually,
a
it is
normal-
partnered with the
Yeah,
NRC,
thought so.
Yeah.
So maybe Energy Action Network.
and
Well, that's
they,
the-
actually, and they are also partnered with the Energy Action Network.
We're all in bed with each other, aren't we?
Yeah, And it is,
Yeah, so
that's the,
VCAN is.
VCAN is the town energy committees group within the Energy Action Network. But they're
I
all,
believe you.
Yeah,
and they're all tied to the NRC. They're all in bed
I'll just trust you.
together.
yeah. Yeah, it's literally on their website, you scroll down and it's VNRC.
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay,
So those seem to be the two big. Predecessor items, like before we really get into it, is how did another town or other towns do this?
Yeah.
What can we expect realistically from the state level and on some timeline? And kind of watered down, filtered down, dumbed down to like, so we don't need to get all the way into reading dockets for Maria's sake.
oh, God, and I
and
write
then-
them and I hate it.
No one's gonna do it anyway.
Right, and then,
And are we anything like Burlington and South Burlington?
Yeah.
Burlington is a different entity, a much older, larger city.
Yeah, I think-
By Vermont standards.
Yeah.
South Burlington has a very different. Centralized growth plan than we do. We have a growth center, but their explosion. On the other side of the road from the U-Mall is completely different than what we're doing here.
But they also have a
Right
lot
now.
of commercial and industrial like we do.
oh, they also have very large. Residential neighborhoods, like we're paying, I think there's,
yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think there's really important differences, but I think there's
Yeah, the tax.
some
base
key
is
similarities that.
Yeah, it's-
That would cause us to want to. You know, possibly use them as a model, like,
Yeah.
Do we know another town that's trying to tackle this after Clean Heat Standard? Okay. Cause that would be even more helpful.
unless,
Because-
Mercy,
what's
I was
the,
gonna ask her.
oh, yeah,
Place Montpelier, you're looking at this
is it
or?
Bradford, not Bradford, Hartford?
Hartford? Are they?
There's others, so I can reach out to Jack Hansen, he has a list of all the towns in Vermont that have done this, he's also a list of towns elsewhere in New England that have gone through this.
We're probably gonna be most well informed by Chittenden County though, just because outside of Chittenden County, it's a very different demographic and a very different income bracket too.
And-
Not that we don't
And
have.
growth patterns are
And growth
different
patterns.
and housing stock. Et cetera.
So it sounds like we need to assign someone to,
I can email you the docket numbers tonight when I get home.
Yeah,
I mean, do it anyway. I mean,
I can sign you guys up, actually. How many?
Yeah, I mean, we
oh, do you get an
It's worth it,
exploder
yeah.
for
I
it
could,
to
yeah, I
follow
could just
these?
get you guys all on there, yeah.
At that, no,
I
so-
joking aside, I would appreciate that, just. to have
yeah, I would
more
too.
dimensions.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna spin your head around, but yeah. I mean, it's all I can do to pretend to pay attention to it.
You know what?
Yeah.
I admire that you do that just in your free time.
I gotta do it for work. I had an intern,
you
and
too?
then she got a real job, so.
Okay, so, someone commit to contacting South Burlington reps and trying to schedule them to come in? And then someone commit to contacting VCAN about getting a status on the clean heat. Is it standard? I'm getting this,
Clean Heat Standard is.
yes, is
state.
the state
Yeah.
one,
It's the Affordable Heat Act,
yeah,
is the current one,
okay. Yeah.
as far as I know,
It's called the Clean Heat
And the
Standard by the
PUC.
Is that what the PUC's calling it that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, that's confusing.
Well, they avoided that because that was when they didn't pass.
Everything's confusing.
Okay. So that seems like our first step is getting some information.
Yeah, so Melinda, you and I can work together on special guests for next meeting.
Sure.
Okay.
I will mention also that Vermont or VGS reached out to me right away
Yeah, of
and
course.
said, we'd be very interested in engaging with you. We have a good model for this. So,
Yeah, I think I think it's important to hear that, at least from what I know that, Burlington Electric did. You know, they're not transitioning off 100% natural gas.
right,
They're working with
It's
Vermont Gas to figure out
85%,
how, we're
right?
not gonna bankrupt a country, a company that employs a lot of Vermonters.
Yeah.
So,
Although they are doing a really good job of shifting their business model too. 'Cause
well,
they know it's coming.
Yeah,
sure, but,
Mhm.
But
anyway,
yeah, I
So,
mean,
so when South Burlington, when the O'Brien project was announced, which is all electric. And that was
That's the
supported
nuclear
by
one?
GMP.
Yeah.
We wrote an article in the Observer that basically talked about that as part of our Living Green series. I talked to Kristen Kelly from GMP, and she was very enthused about talking to us about a full electrification project and resilience in the town of Williston. Now that was last fall when we wrote that. Now that we're at this, I'll bet we can get them to come in too and talk about it. you
yeah,
know.
champion.
Yeah, they're on BGS and GMP.
But I think
They're the same company, bring them both in. Yeah.
Okay, they're the same parent company, right?
Yes.
yeah, it's like,
I'm supposed to know that.
it's in Quebec, they're both owned by like a pension fund in Quebec, it's really bizarre.
Yeah.
But yes, they are the same
And then
company.
they have
Yeah,
another pipeline.
GMP and
BGS.
VGS are.
I
And
did.
then, like, I think.
Yeah, if you go up the ladder far enough, you end up on a French website and you're like, what?
You end up Hydro Quebec if you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all.
Yeah, it's a
That's all
pension
another
fund. Or pension.
HQ
fund,
is
yeah.
pretty cool.
So the next meeting, do you wanna just have the Burlington, South Burlington folks come in and then another meeting?
I would say we'll keep it to
Just
South
South
Burlington,
Burlington,
and then maybe
Yeah.
if we can get someone from VCAN. Even just to give like a high level, like split the meeting.
Even if they could join virtually too, just
Yeah.
to give us.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
Or maybe that's too much more meeting. It's gonna be a lot to
I think it's,
Take-
I think
take
it's
in the
South Burlington
process.
and then,
future meeting for
then
the,
Beacon or.
yeah.
Or whoever you're gonna end up being able to find.
Yeah, I
Efficiency
think
Vermont.
South Burlington is probably going to be an hour agenda item, if not
Yeah.
longer.
mhm,
We tend to ask a lot of questions, so.
okay,
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what their process was, because it's. The only thing I can think of to like calm the chaos and like create some structure is like, okay, just take theirs, delete stuff and like use their structure, but there's so much that goes into that, so how did you get to here? How did you get to this section? How do you know?
and. You know, if you reading through that ordinance, it's clear to me that there was some compromise, so they may have, you'll see.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, you bring in the stakeholders and somebody's going to give a
Yeah.
different opinion.
Melinda, how does planning commission do project planning?
How do they do project planning?
Yeah, like for Wilson 2050, for the form-based code, like, does the planning commission have some kind of preferred way to do big project plans like this?
Um. Hmm. I. I think, I'm just trying to think, I think it's sort of haphazard and
Okay.
mostly directed by staff, the actual, like, the planning part, like. Meeting to meeting planning,
Mhm.
although there's input from the chairs, but. Like I'm thinking about just drafting the town plan, it's mostly been. Staff has been drafting chapters and putting them up, and then we've been discussing them week to week,
But even just like from a tooling perspective, like, do you
Yeah.
have software that you use for like retail?
No.
Someone's like, there's a lot of work here, and
Yeah.
taking it, after we kind of get the initial influx of information,
Mhm.
kind of coming up with the plan. would
Yeah,
be-
I mean, so. So my suggestion would be to, gather information, you know. Do your outreach to stakeholders, and you're just gathering information from them. And then before drafting an ordinance. Just draft like a rough outline of what that would look like, just a framework. Check in with the select board again. And then after that, draft an ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is there value? Because we could try and write an article for the Observer every month, and. The Observer wrote that
Front
was
page.
coming and put it on the front page, this is even before the select board
and it wasn't.
met. Huh?
It wasn't a good article, there's a lot.
And it got thrown together, but
Statements
then
of fact.
now the select board has said something. Do we actually write an article of? About. What we're going through and what are people's opinions
Yeah, I like it.
to
Yeah.
get feedback. Every time we say that and we write an article, I don't know how many people write back to us, if any.
Yeah,
Occasionally somebody will run into me and.
That's right, at least you can say,
Yeah,
you put it
yeah.
out there and it's not,
Mhm.
it's not up to us to make people respond.
How much do we want to be? How much work do we want to have done or like heard, like, how far along in our plan do we want to be before we do that?
Oh, I think you do it first,
Right off the bat.
right up. the
Yeah,
bat.
I guess what I'm saying.
There
Yeah,
for
the select
next-
board, yeah, like, it's like, put that out for maybe the August.
Okay.
Which would be August 22nd.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
August, but then we could have, we wanna have actual input, like with a couple of weeks later or a month later.
You could have,
Public input at that point.
I
Just
guess my
announce
thinking
it
was
in the
that-
article and then have a
you could have a
meeting set up.
survey, you have a survey
Yeah.
link in the article. I don't know, I mean.
Doesn't work with a newspaper, you can't click on the newspaper.
Oh, there's an online version
I
though.
know, but nobody reads
You
it.
can have a
No.
very simple URL.
You could put it on Front Porch Forum, but you're gonna get
Yeah.
very biased answers.
Yeah.
Put it on
Well, you want
front porch
bias there,
forum.
you want everybody's input, and Front Porch
You-
Forum gets to be a running thread though, I would look for more.
Well,
Of one side of the.
That's what I
story.
mean, like you could put the survey link
The
on
survey,
Front
yeah.
Porch Forum.
Yes.
The people who are gonna answer though, and this is true of most surveys though, it's gonna be here and
Yeah,
here.
they love it.
Yes.
Best thing ever, the dumbest thing you ever could think of.
Yeah,
And you're like, sweet, that's not helpful.
So it was an idea.
The only reason I was asking like for timing, do we wanna know more? So that we can convey more information, cause otherwise I do feel like it's gonna be,
Well,
do you wanna
it's
buy
just
an EV? Yes,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
do you want
yeah.
heat pumps? Yes, no, like if there's anything we can add to the conversation
I
to
know, I see
inform.
the point.
In addition to,
I
That's
think
why
it's
I'm
just a
wondering if
plan
we
to
need
plan.
the public right at this point before we have something solid, because we don't know what questions we even need to answer, and if we start asking questions before. Before we have an idea of what the policy is gonna look like, we might bias people toward or against it, just because if we start asking questions, for example, about. If all homes need to be carbon free, you're gonna get people assuming or that. The clean energy ordinance or whatever we're calling it, clean heat ordinance. Is going to cost them money or something, where we probably need to really clarify what we're doing and what it's going to apply to before we talk to the
That was
public.
my first
Yeah.
inclination, when I
Yeah.
thought of this before we had this discussion.
Because as soon as
We don't
you
really
say-
know enough yet.
To your point of being, and everybody's saying being one polarized. As soon as you say carbon free,
It's gonna.
an
yeah.
entire faction of the public is going to be against you.
Oh, yeah.
And for them.
Well, but I
And
think the
for, you're gonna
article-
get both sides.
The article can just be, hey, we're working on the town plan.
Yeah,
Part of the town plan is this commitment to whatever we're committing to. I mean, it doesn't have to lead anyone to a survey or question or response. It's just saying, this is what we're doing. more to come.
Well, should we just
Yeah.
tell the Observer to follow up on their article
I mean,
Or we
you
and
know,
not write our own? and
the
have them-
Observer is probably gonna write an article. about this
You'll
anyway.
probably see it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because,
that they
because,
already have.
yeah,
Okay, good.
Jason's probably.
Since it went
it'll be
through.
I would have
published
expected,
tomorrow.
yeah, because the meeting was last Tuesday,
Tuesday,
Yeah.
yes.
that's why it
Yeah.
passes
Yeah,
deadline.
good, good, good.
Mhm.
So that,
Yeah, I would be very,
So am I
just
doing-
be very careful
So
about.
we'll see what comes out
Like too
tomorrow.
early.
Okay.
okay, 20 minutes left.
What do we wanna
About
use our
35
time?
more things.
All
All
right,
right, let me,
Well, we have the timeline for the energy plan.
well, that'll take about 3 minutes maybe. So I expect, well, let's see, I expect to get Melanie's, data or whatever sometime in August. And so I'm hoping that we can wrap up the energy plan by end of August, early September, and move it on to the planning commission.
How close are we?
We're close.
Very close.
That's what I thought. There's like, what, 2 sections?
There's really one section.
Okay.
We have gone through everything, all the stuff we had to do.
Yeah.
And then we've got the whole intro piece.
Yeah.
That's what Melanie is providing us
Right.
data on.
Mhm.
We have to take what she says and try and word it, or maybe just rip everything out of the beginning of our current one.
yeah,
Anyway,
because we
yeah.
do have stuff, I think, sprinkled throughout the plan that might be
Plus, we need a better
changed, right?
executive overview in the beginning of it too.
Well, yeah, that's what I can tell you.
So that's likely to be an item on the, not the next meeting, but maybe the one after that. Depending on how long they need.
Yeah, let me look real quick. I'm gonna
So
just,
today's the 26th. So August meetings are the 9th, sorry. Today's on the 26th, it's 24th, but August meetings would be 7 and 21. No, 14 and
Today's the
28.
24th.
Yes, seventh and
I-
21st.
No,
I
second,
have
second,
it on-
second,
Oh,
fourth.
14th and 28th.
14th.
I've got it, yeah, so I've got it on for August 14th that, Melanie comes back and shares the community energy data. And August 28th, final edits to the plan.
Do you think we'll be able to accomplish final edits in one session?
Well, I'm hoping that,
Some homework.
like, yeah, I'm hoping that we don't have to like go through the entire plan and start making changes all over again. I'm hoping it can be, maybe each of you reads through it and,
No wordsmithing.
No
like substantive
wordsmithing,
changes on.
please.
Yeah.
Since we've already spent 6 months doing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we all get assigned a section.
We
Yeah.
already did.
And, then.
Going back to version 7.
Anyway, I'll get rid of this.
No, back on schedule.
The FY 25 work plan, anything other than?
Maybe not.
At this point,
Um,
I mean, what? Do you wanna jump into that? Do you wanna bring that up and?
sure, I'm not gonna share this memo, you guys can read it on your own, but. Basically, just flip through this, chart, the green things have already been done, the yellow things are sort of ongoing things. And the red things are things that we haven't started.
I think, so the topic that I wanted to bring up in other business
Mhm.
is in here. You can scroll up, the EV event is marked as green, that should probably be
Ongoing,
ongoing, because we do that once a year, and then. That is something that we're gonna need to. We've done it 2 or 3 times already, I think we can move pretty quickly on it, but that is something we wanna get the date nailed down. And start reaching out to the partners that we usually work with on that.
yep. Mhm.
Because we renamed it from EV event to Energy
Energy
Fair.
fair, yeah.
We have to predict the perfect weather weekend, which we've done 2 years in a row.
So maybe, maybe this is something you guys can look through on your own. And, you have any suggestions? You can,
Yeah, Melinda, I don't wanna create a bunch more work. But the way that you set this up last year, I thought was super awesome, right? When you had we all went in and voted, and you had the drafts.
oh, sure, yeah, I can
Is
do
it
that
worth
again.
just doing that again? And maybe looking at last year's, looking at this year's and seeing what's changed.
Uh-huh. That was the effort to impact.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can do that.
and maybe share last year's, because rather than bias us, I think it might just help us all remember what we said
Yeah.
the previous year.
Yeah, and, share last year's. Okay. Yeah, and then this is just sort of like a memo that I kind of try to keep up with every year to just talk about like things that the town's done.
This is the annual report.
No, it's not the annual report. Oh yeah, and then it says at the bottom priorities, for. Like that. Priorities for 24, 26, and then I don't even think, oh, I didn't even have the clean heat. Unless it's at the very end. No, oh, here it is, pending select board approval, explore implementing a clean heat standard through ordinance. That's sort of. Yeah. It's gonna take a lot of time.
To tie a few of these topics together. If we're ready and comfortable with it. The energy fair could be a great time to. Solicit some community feedback on the clean heat ordinance.
That's true.
Now, let's all be fair. It's gonna be a pre-selected bias group, right? They decided to come out to an energy fair and learn about heat pumps and EVs, so it's not gonna be representative, but it would be one opportunity to gather feedback.
Well,
I mean,
I was gonna ask about this because we're a bit smaller than, South Burlington that has like an energy literal fair.
Yeah.
Can we piggyback on some other sort of major town event? For example, I'm thinking, is there any time where people are drawn in the fall to Williston Central School? There are like a gabillion events that go on there, especially at the beginning of the school year. Can we piggyback on something like that so that we get a more, like, some passers throughers, not just those that are there deliberately for the energy fair, but get some.
Yeah, I mean, doing it at ABS does mean we're kind of back away from.
Well, we did that on purpose because we brought so many EVs in.
We did, yeah.
We needed the area, we needed the parking, we needed it not to conflict with another. That was our thoughts on the last two.
You can basically pick any weekend, any Saturday morning, and the community park is going to be packed.
Yeah.
So we can't use that parking lot,
Yeah.
despite the fact we have a charger there, which would be cool. But maybe if we could use the school's bus turnaround area. That would have a lot of people passing by. Or right back to where we started years ago, and just see if we can't do something in the town hall parking lot or the. What do you call it, tower.
Do you want to try to coordinate it with Drive Electric Week so that you can register? Because there's basically a couple of weekends. It's either
That conflicts with the other.
September 28th or October 5th.
Yeah, so what we've done in the past is we've coordinated with National Drive Electric Week. We have reached out and made sure to not do it the same day as the South Burlington.
I don't even know if they're gonna have one this year, to be
Really?
It
honest.
doesn't look like they've got one determined yet.
No,
But it was
Since
huge
TBD.
last year.
Yeah, but the
Well.
Net Zero Energy Fest is the
Is
21st of
that,
September.
is that BD?
21st.
Yeah.
I think that's, yeah, BD
Okay.
kind of took that over. I think even last year, I think they collaborated on that one. The 22nd, you said?
21st of September.
21st.
Yeah.
That's a Saturday.
So.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
first
this is
Saturday.
So the weekend of the 28th or the weekend of the 5th would be 2 days that would be within the Drive Electric Week. I mean, those are the only 2 weekends that are
Yeah.
within Drive Electric Week. So if you want to do it and be able, and the first year that you did it, well, a couple of years ago, it was coordinated with Drive Electric Week, and I think you got a lot of participation out of that, especially from EV drivers.
We
Because then if you could register the event,
Cause last year I registered it
yeah,
with that, and it got published on their website of when we
Right.
were gonna have it.
And we had interest from that, people came that told us they heard about it through that.
so do
So the-
either of those, do you
the
actually
5th?
want to set a date so that you can start reaching out to
October
partners and
5th?
vendors?
I like the 5th. Randomly, I'm just gonna put it out there. I have no preference because I can't plan that far in advance.
Mm.
If we need the date. I think last year we waited a little too long to plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna wanna reach out to people soon, because if there are a lot of these energy fairs, then people like Drive Electric they get booked and they.
Well, again, are there any like sport activities that are more likely to happen on one of those 2 weekends or something? Just no.
Melinda, is it cool with open meeting law if we all agree to just go home, check our own calendars and then send you a preferred date?
That's
As
fine,
long as we're not collaborating, right?
yeah,
Just
just,
so you can-
right, just, I can just send out, like, I'll send out a doodle poll,
Okay.
how's that?
That works.
And then you guys can.
Either
do
way.
that.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter for me,
Okay,
so I just can't look that far.
Another- I might be away there last week in September.
And again, just throwing out random stuff, Kevin, we should definitely have the bike ped group engaged for that this year.
Okay, good.
We've got some real
Wow, okay.
movement, I think, on that, and so. Okay. Good to have a forum for that.
We have Matt's dropping out and Dara dropped out, so we have, are unavailable. And, so, okay.
That's 10 weeks away if we do September 28th.
Wow,
That
there's already tons of.
blows my.
Not locally, but there's tons of people already registering their events.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, let's put.
yes, yes.
I can't believe that's only 10 weeks away. That makes me really sad for summer already. So that's solidly no longer summer, because it's actually after the,
uh-huh,
or after the autumnal.
I don't know, I hear 10 weeks, I'm like, that's like a good amount of good weather we have left in front of us.
There are no Vermont events listed yet.
All right, so Melinda, you'll send out the doodle poll for that, and you'll also send out at some point before the next meeting, some kind of information gathering tool, maybe like last time around the work plan.
yeah,
Get people's input on that.
yeah,
So I guess that moves us on to the fiscal year 24 annual report.
and actually, I think, I'm pretty sure that we used Mentimeter for that, poll, and we did it
That's right.
at the meeting, so I'll prepare something like that so that you can. Do that, and maybe I'll just, send out the different topics, so you can at least be thinking about in your minds, like. About that, yeah, annual report, so I've not done anything, as far as drafting an annual report, but it is that time of year. And,
They actually should come from us.
anybody, yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to,
Is this what we did?
Yes,
what we did last year, report.
yes, through June 30th.
Do we want
Oh, right, the 5th. I was like, why is it so late? Right, because the fiscal year is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get published till next year. So, but you have to do it now before you forget.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just.
Do we want to divvy that up? Do we all want to?
Generally, you go through your meeting minutes, because I've written it, or at least drafted it the last 2 years. Go through your meeting minutes for the last year, find all the big projects you did and just write a sentence or something.
I'll take that on.
Great,
I-
But for the whole year?
Yeah, why not? I go through minutes all the time.
So
Like,
she's willing to read minutes, but
Not
not
dockets.
two dockets for the PhD.
Hey.
I mean, I just wanna make-
Very different language. Different language. No, I'll read the dockets too, but like, I'm happy to do that. I feel like I haven't been. Well, last year I was out for a good chunk because I was in Minnesota for my dad, so it's like I wanna add more value from last year. Making up for that. When
And,
is that, when do we want that by? Just so that I have a
Next March, all right?
Okay.
no,
draft.
why don't you, how about like in a month or two?
Would you mind just sending me your last year's one so I can see what it looks like?
Yeah,
So I can. Where is, otherwise, is it on the town website or?
it's in the annual report.
Yes, and it's one page. You get one page.
But I can send it to you.
So
if
that's
you
all
want.
you get.
Okay, yeah, I was like, okay.
So think of a Word doc, one page.
Yep, that's fine. I can do
Depending on the
that. Be the greatest.
Yeah.
Greatest.
Well, you have to give a lot of value adds to her, so we keep our energy coordinator.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
No,
But for,
don't, if you do, I'll just scratch it out.
That's amazing.
We don't do that here.
Wow, did we actually get through our agenda?
Yeah. So we
On
just.
to other business, we've already talked about the energy fair, we've got some stuff to move forward
We haven't
there.
selected a green article, we brought up this topic, but we haven't settled on it. I don't know.
So that's gonna come up, today's the 24th. So that's 1, 2. 3.5 weeks, which seems like forever, but it never is,
No.
before I have to send it to the observer, so.
So did the article you wrote, did
yeah,
that get
that's not the
sent?
one.
Yeah, well, that's it, that's publishing tomorrow.
That's
Oh,
why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're talking August
Yeah.
now for.
Yeah, so we usually do an EV article right before the energy fair, but we did the EV article in July.
Yeah,
Well, August is back to school. Do we wanna do
Oh, bike ped,
bike ped?
but we
Safe
What-
routes to school, we do just last.
Yeah,
year.
that's true.
did that back in what?
I mean, you
June,
could,
right?
Yeah, June
you
or
could
No, it was
focus,
either earlier, it was like,
Yeah.
I think it was.
April or May,
It was
because
the beginning of her, yeah.
we didn't.
Wait, don't we have e-buses now?
Oh, we could talk about the CBSD
Oh.
grant.
you could talk about the new electric mowers and
The robot.
the robots.
The line robot. Okay, you need to
Cause Stowe's gonna read it and then my world and Stowe. Let's not do that.
Williston's a robot. Why do
Yeah,
you-
that's exactly what they're gonna say.
It's gonna say how many
It's like
hours
stupid
did
fall
we?
groomer that didn't work and Williston's a robot?
Well, no, seriously, how many man hours did they say we were gonna save?
Zero.
It was, it was,
750.
Yeah, 750 man hours.
it was unbelievable.
Gonna
how
put the
many-
Stowe reporter fake news out of Williston.
it's owned by the same company, isn't it?
So we've got,
Exactly.
Melinda, I
Mm.
don't, I think I asked you, I can't
I guess.
remember. There, in the budget that passed, there was a bond question for, I think, 3 new buses, and I think the bond question was
Oh.
for 3 electric buses, right?
You did ask me and I don't know the answer.
Okay.
So they're getting, is it 4 new? Or 6 new?
I thought it was
There's 6 new
Six.
buses, electric buses.
Yeah, through a grant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there were 2 things, there was like the grant that was in the paper
Yeah,
recently, but then there's also the bond that did get approved, I'm just wondering if.
I
there's
don't
gonna
think that
be-
was for electric, because we were gonna try and get ahead of it, and I don't think we did.
I think, well, Melinda
And
and
it
I talked
just-
to,
No, they were just regular buses.
Yeah, I thought it was just regular
You
buses,
sure?
cause when
I
I
think so.
remember going to the polls and thinking, oh yeah, they just are, it's whatever, it's just money
Another
for
again and
buses.
again, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
okay,
But if they just got 6 new electric buses, are they still gonna do? I guess if your bond passes, you're obligated to.
No, you're not obligated to spend anything.
Oh, you're not.
No.
so, yeah. I don't know.
But you can't spend it on something else, I see.
Wow.
No.
Unless you, well,
Mm-mm.
If it's
you-
earmarked and voted on. I
Well,
don't
it's
think you
earmarked
can-
as a bus, I don't know, there might be some wood for it.
Well, yes, we could probably do electric, but,
You'd get two instead of three, yeah.
and then you'd save on gas now.
That'd be pretty cool.
But you're already getting six, because you got this huge grant.
Does anyone know what the fleet size is for CPSD?
I think they mentioned it in the article,
I thought so too, but I can't remember.
40-ish, does that make sense?
Yeah, you and I talked to the
So
COO.
20% are not gonna be
CPSD.
electric? That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's a nice stat.
did we?
Remember talking like a year and a half ago?
Okay,
And he was speaking very highly of the electric buses and he
right,
had said that, and this is why I could have sworn that the bond was for electric buses. He had made the
Yeah.
explicit point that the next bond or the next budget item we put into buses, they're going to be electric.
well,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
she was
that
asking,
happened,
That's
but
the reason, yeah.
yeah, so.
I can reach out to him. I think I got his email somewhere in GCU.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Um,
that would be great. Maybe just like combine that, the bus thing with with Todd's new mower and like just like talk about electrification in
but
general.
we
with the
need,
story
we
there.
need a photo.
Oh, wait, I have a photo, and he gave me a video too.
Yeah.
So,
And then we can,
Plus we have an electric.
I'll send it to
mower, too.
Steph.
Right.
Full-size electric mower.
it's a zero turn, isn't it?
Yeah,
Full size zero
I
turn?
expected, so yeah. Should, yeah, we could interview Todd,
Mhm.
get a
Well,
direct quote.
it actually, is not Todd's mower, he got the robot and then Public Works got the mower.
Oh.
Todd didn't want a mower,
So he's not.
Oh, Todd is Parks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
what's the mower gonna be used for?
tooling around here, getting-
All
it's
of the
not-
grooming.
It's not for
Not for
the
the
cleaning.
cleaning.
It's for grooming all the public.
Yeah.
Yeah. The-
Why didn't Todd want?
I think all the park.
Don't get me started on it.
Just get myself.
All right.
They're on the
all
same
right.
group chat and they're like, no.
All right, well, with that.
One more thing,
Oh, yes.
window dressers is proceeding. Melinda, Matt and I have been going and visiting people and measuring their windows. This is the sample, not the real one, but having a fun time for everything from 100-year-old homes to ranches to the Alcala's 1700s home where nothing is straight.
Right.
Mm,
So, but we did
I
use
got to stand on Fran Stoddard's bed.
yes, and climb ladders to get to windows, and so it was interesting.
And this is in conjunction with the South Burlington event? Or the-
It's Burlington.
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 Yeah,
So,
Burlington
yeah, so
windows.
we're ending up doing about half a dozen houses
Okay.
between the three of us, together, those teams, sometimes.
When is the event?
It's in November.
It's around Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
That'd be,
Yeah,
it's a bummer.
anyway,
Bummer, and that'd be a really great Living Green article
we did one.
Mhm.
about doing it, but I mean, like getting feedback from people that
Yes.
Yeah,
had the service done for them. And
Yeah,
then to generate,
It's a good
to
idea.
generate stuff for
Yeah.
our next one, except that's gonna publish the week of Christmas and no one's gonna read the Observer.
yeah.
the other thing is that, during the energy fair, we can set up, like a little window dressers table, like with
Yes,
the
That's a great idea.
information and the
Right.
little sample
We have a little
window,
sample.
sign
yeah.
up sheet or whatever. So-
And-
I have seen more and more chatter on a lot of mom groups, local mom groups on Facebook
Yeah.
about energy costs recently.
Oh, yeah.
There was someone up, in particular, today, the one I saw was someone up on Hardwick, because they were on Hardwick Electric, and they're like, why is my electricity bill $300 for a 1,400 square foot home? She's like, we keep our air conditioning off, we do all this, and people were all going in. He started talking about their per kilowatt hour charge of different utilities, and I'm like, man, people they're paying attention now.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing more and more of that, so this is the
Yes.
time where people are really getting focused on energy.
And people
And-
are having to use their air conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much
Yeah.
more, yeah.
Yes.
Well, and this one was like, we don't even turn our air conditioning on during the day. We just keep windows shut and all of our blinds closed, and it's like, okay, so we're getting to the point where window dressers and weatherization and things like that. People are gonna listen more and more and more.
Because the truth is I don't know about Hardwick, but GMP, the rates have been going up at a very reasonable.
Yeah, they're going up 6%
It is,
again.
it's a bigger one this year,
Yeah.
but last year was 3, the year before. that was
Well,
like
and for
2.
the New England average, it's very, we pay some of the cheapest electricity per kilowatt hour. However, there's a stark difference, and you probably, I don't know what Stowe's is, but between the smaller utilities and munis, there's
Yeah.
a huge gap because when people were comparing their electric bills, even
Yeah.
on this post, it was like same size house, hundreds of dollars difference. And granted, there are lots of things that go into
Yeah.
that, but they started showing per kilowatt hour, and I think what GMP's at.
Is it 18, 19?
GMP's 19,
19.
19 is 20 cents with the efficiency fee added in.
Right,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, but people were showing like 25 cents, basically, like.
So
much,
it's
much
interesting to me.
No one should be that high,
Or like,
cause Stowe and we're like 18, so we're almost.
Wow.
up there, yeah.
Huh.
And it's because Vepsa does some things that we don't need to talk about with how they come up with their rates, but we're all going in for rate increases. I mean, we've raised
Yeah.
our rates 24% over
Well,
the past 3 years.
and that's what people are talking about too,
Yeah.
is they've seen their bills go up by
Yes,
amount of
because
this
COVID.
woman in Hardwick, though, when she was doing the math, it's like well over 20 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, I mean, I have to check what Hardwick has done recently, but I mean, I'm not bragging that we're the highest municipality.
So lighting.
Yeah,
I know
I
that we are.
think you just switched.
Oh, is it that?
Yeah.
Okay.
well, and it could be other fees too, because it's not just
It's
your
the
per kilowatt
transmission.
hour. Yeah,
It's the transmission,
Yeah.
that's what's going on.
Yep.
That's some really wind charges.
okay,
Is VPP, is that the VPPSA?
Yeah, I've got some, yeah.
And that's our